Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the new proposal by the lieutenant, the lieutenant, as they call him in the NFL, for the new college football super league. We just went over the pros and cons of that, basically the general outline of what it would look like. Um, excuse me. In this segment coming up, though, we are going to talk a little bit about the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland A's are a mess of an organization. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to say they have the worst front office in all of North American sports. You know, now that Dan Snyder is out of Washington, D.C. with the now Commanders football team, whatever, it's if you pay any attention to how they've been running their organization for even just the last 5 seasons, it's a mess. But we're going to break all of that down and more. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. It'll pop up on the bottom of the screen there. You can control what we talk about in the show. If you have a question that you would love me to answer, something that it doesn't seem like I'm going to get to, all you need to do is leave that tip or donation. A question will pop up on the bottom of the screen there. We will talk about whatever you want to talk about. We'll have a little discussion. Once again, that link to leave a tip or donation is gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, in this second segment here, we are going to talk a little bit about the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland Athletics, the Oakland A's, they're a mess. And there's really no other way to talk about them other than starting with that sentence. The Oakland A's are a poverty franchise. They are run like a poverty franchise. And it's not all their fault. I'm going to start here talking about why it's not their fault, and then I'm going to get into what they've done and what they're doing, because a lot of it is their fault. In fact, I'd go as far as to say most of it is for their fault, but it's not all their fault. And you can kind of a little bit, just play a little bit devil's advocate for how they're doing. And we're going to get out of the way quickly. It's just because they're a small market team in baseball. That's it. It's the only thing. You've seen Moneyball with the idea that they can't spend big. Teams like the Yankees are going to outbid them, blah, blah, blah. That's the one thing you can point to say, oh, they've been bad for so long, but it's because they're a small market team. That's not why they've been bad for so long. They've been bad for so long not just because they're a small market team, but because they're cheap. They are so cheap. The Oakland Athletics total pay on the roster last year was less than what Max Scherzer made in one season. Now, Max Scherzer is a Hall of Fame pitcher. He's going to be first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest pitchers of our generation. Max Scherzer is. But he shouldn't be making more than an entire major league roster. That's ridiculous. That is kind of unacceptable. The Oakland Athletics have been caught up for quite some time in trying to fund a new stadium. And stadium funding is kind of an interesting topic that I will talk about a little bit in the future, because we just had some news about that in football and other sports as well. But they've been trying to get Oakland, the city that they've been in for 57 years, to pay for a new stadium, basically completely out of the taxpayers' pockets. The owners of the A's are going to barely fund any of it. And if not, they're moving. And that's been a big piece of contention for quite some time, because anyone that knows Oakland fans, you saw how they were with the Raiders. They're passionate up there, They will go out there and they support the team. They care about this team. Even as bad as it's been, they care about this team. The attendances are empty, but that's because it's a protest. And there's plenty of passionate athletics fans out there. They're one of the more passionate fan bases, and I feel bad for them, because every single sport in Oakland has left. You go 10 years ago, you had the Golden State Warriors playing in Oakland. You had the Raiders still there playing in Oakland. You had the Athletics, and even to a certain extent, you kind of had the 49ers, although they weren't really in Oakland. But they had three sports in their city, and not even 10 years later, there's going to be zero. After this season, after 2024, the Oakland Athletics are officially moving. They voted last season to go to Vegas. All talks fell apart. The city was not going to fund a stadium for them, and they said, fine, you're not going to fund our stadium, we're leaving. So that's what they did. They left, or they said they were leaving. The issue is, Las Vegas does not have a stadium built yet. And the lease for the Oakland A's ends this season. So they are trying to get a place to stay. They were in danger of being homeless until they just figured out a solution today. They're going to play the next 3 seasons, potentially 4, in Sacramento. In a minor league stadium. They'll be sharing a minor league stadium. They'll be moving from the Oakland Coliseum, the last relic of the old era, where football and baseball were played together, to a huge stadium there. The Oakland Coliseum is a legendary stadium, but they're going to be moving from the Oakland Coliseum to a 14,000 seat stadium in Sacramento. Not that they were selling 14,000 seats anyway, but I don't know how this is good enough to be an MLB stadium. The MLB, Rob Manfred came out today and he said they've made it MLB ready. But it's a smaller ballpark, and it just doesn't feel like an MLB stadium. And of course the Oakland A's would have this. They signed a contract to play there for 3 years while their stadium is being built in Las Vegas. So they are eventually going to move to Las Vegas. But they signed a 3-year deal with an option for a 4th. But the way that the A's are, I wouldn't be surprised if that stadium isn't done by the time 4 years is done. They were in danger of being homeless once. I don't know what they'll do again. Maybe they'll just keep extending that contract, but aside from the mess that is moving, the A's have also just have done other things just this season to prove how awful of ownership there is. I kind of touched a little bit on it earlier when I said the stadium might be empty, but that's because of a protest. A's fans have been organizing a protest to have the owner sell the team because they're trying desperately to keep the team in Oakland. And the owner just has never shown any signs of selling the team. Not once. But as bad as they were last season, the A's had a couple of bright spots. They had Esteury Ruiz, led the league, the entire American League, in stolen bases. Elite base running, very, very, very good defense out there in center field. And Brent Rooker, who was their lone all-star. And both of those guys are not in the lineup. Brent Rooker was benched. Not that he started off particularly hot or anything, but on a team like the A's that are horrifically bad. You know, they're one of the worst in the league, and they have been for quite some time. You kind of need a guy. Your all-star last year. It'd be cool to have him in the lineup. You know, at least try and draw some interest. And they send Esteury Ruiz down to AAA. Esteury Ruiz started off the season hitting .400 with over 1,000 OPS, on base plus slugging. That is insane numbers from a guy that wasn't the greatest from behind the dish last season. He was out there raking, and he was probably their best defender out there in the field, and he's a demon on the base paths. And they send him they don't just bench him, they send him down to AAA. And A's fans did some digging, trying to figure out why this happened. It turns out one of those protests was selling merch, and one of those pieces of merch was a little bracelet, a little like a one of those like plastic wristband type things that you get at summer camp or something like that. Little engraving on it, and those players wore it. Stewie Ruiz and Brent Rooker, they wore they wore those wristbands. It doesn't say anything on them. It just said the logo of it, which I think was like uh, Breakback Bar or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was just the name of the fan group, right? And now those guys are benched. So the theory is this was a response to that. And a lot of people are calling for the A's to be investigated over this because they're clearly not trying to be competitive. Those are two of your best players on your team. Stewie Ruiz especially. He's kind of unforgivable to send him down to AAA. An exciting guy like that, watching him play, even if your team isn't good, you get a guy on the base paths that can fly, it's exciting. A guy who can make these beautiful catches out to center field. It's exciting, But the A's just said, nah, we're done. Send him down. Get him out of here. The A's ownership group is probably the worst owners in all of American sports. And that's a fun title to compete for. You have to compete with the Angels and their incompetence, although incompetence is better than being awful. You have to compete. You had to compete with Dan Snyder, and I think they were doing a really good job of staying just above Dan Snyder. And you had to compete with David Tepper and the Panthers. I think they've got him beat right now. It's just a mess. Everything with Oakland is a mess. It's all a dumpster fire out there, and it's a shame because those fans are really passionate. They really are, and it sucks to see a team with such a passionate fan base just kind of be a dumpster fire for like 3 straight seasons. They used to do a cycle where they would get really good for 1 year and then we have to pay these guys now. Now let's trade them all away. They were really good like 3 years ago or so. And they traded everyone away, and then they just never got good again. And it had happened. It happens. They go through this cycle. They're just good, and then they trade everyone away, and then it takes them 5 years to get good again, and then they're good for 1 year, and they trade everybody away, and it's a mess. It's a cycle of torment. Maybe once they move to Vegas, a bigger market, they will finally start investing. But if this ownership group continues to run the organization the way that they've been running the organization when they move to Vegas, that's a crime. And I think MLB should seriously consider looking at making them sell. Just because they're not trying to win baseball games. They're not. I don't mind ownership groups being a little cheap. It's fine. I understand sometimes. You want to save some money. You want to try and save up and go get that guy next offseason. But when you consistently do this for a 10-year stretch, this is just how you run your baseball team. You need to be willing to open your pocketbooks. You need to be willing to build and put a competitive product out there on the field. And the A's just have not been willing to do that. And it really is just a shame. But anyway, coming up in our third segment, we are going to talk a little bit about the NBA. Julius Randle of the New York Knicks is officially out for the season. We'll talk about what that means for their playoff hopes, what that means for next season with the Knicks, and everything else surrounding that. So stick around. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.